Throughout the history of the Ozarks, we've heard stories about almost anything you can think of: monsters, Civil War bushwhackers, and even healers. But of all of these stories, there's some legends that didn't scare people away, but rather were meant to bring them here.
Probably no story has been more common throughout the Ozarks than the buried treasure story. And when you look into these things, there are literally dozens and dozens of these buried treasure stories. And they're all across the Ozarks, and almost every county, almost every little community has its own story about buried treasure.
Stone County in particular is a hot spot for these stories, and many of these legends are associated with one common place: Bread Tray Mountain, found on the south side of what today is Table Rock Lake.
Bread Tray Mountain had all kinds of these stories, and they're all variations. One of them was that an Indian tribe had lived at Bread Tray Mountain for years and years and had this secret stash of silver that they used to make jewelry. And when they were forced out of the Ozarks and forced to move west by white people moving in, that they sealed up the cave where all this silver was stashed.
But these stories often come with very different versions of what really happened.
Another version is that there were Spanish conquistadors who came in the 1500s and enslaved the Indians who lived in the area and forced them to mine silver from this silver mine. And at one point, the Indians rebel against their enslavement, and they kill all of the Spaniards except for one priest who lived just long enough, fortunately for our story, to make it out somewhere and to tell what happened and where he had come from and about this silver mine.
There's also one group that many locals would easily recognize that's also associated with the Bread Tray Mountain legends.
The Bald Knobbers, being a popular vigilante group in the late 1800s in the area, there are even stories that the Bald Knobbers had buried treasure at Bread Tray Mountain somewhere.
While it might be more common in the stories, silver is not the only treasure thought to be hiding somewhere on Bread Tray Mountain.
One of the few gold stories is also associated with Bread Tray Mountain, and that is the story that Cortez and his men had come up from Mexico, and they had all this Aztec gold that they had pilfered while in Mexico, and that for some reason they buried it at Bread Tray Mountain.
But what exactly makes Bread Tray Mountain and Stone County such a popular area for these stories?
I think part of the reason for that is that these buried treasure stories circulate because of tourism. It's a popular way to entertain tourists when they come to the Ozarks. Maybe not so much in the 21st century, but at one time, that was one of the ways that promoters in the Ozarks tried to garner interest in the region, was by putting out all these buried treasure stories.
Is there any proof in these tall tales of treasure?
Eventually, these silver tales make it into maps, and we know that at least as early as 1735, there was a French map of the middle part of North America, kind of the Mississippi Valley, that actually located a silver mine near the mouth of the Merrimack River in what today is Missouri.